5 things that happened after Jesus died. When the world went dark, and the Son of Man took his final breath, the earth trembled. But that was just the beginning. In the shadows of that moment, 5 unimaginable events unfolded, each one a sign, each one a testament. The veil tore, the dead rose, and the silence of the grave was shattered. These were not mere coincidences. They were messages written in blood and stone. Do you know what happened after the cross? Are you ready to uncover the truth? Firstly, there was an earthquake. Nature reacted impressively to Jesus' death. Matthew tells us that the earth shook and the rocks broke. Creation itself felt the impact of the death of the Son of God. This shaking and the cracking of the rocks are described as a significant response by the earth to the sacred events that took place on the cross. Jesus' death was such a powerful event that even the natural elements responded, underlining the magnitude of Christ's sacrifice. Number 2, the tombs were opened. Matthew, in his Gospel, presents us with an extraordinary and singular event that is not found in the other Gospels. After Jesus' death, the tombs were opened and many bodies of saints, people devoted to God who had died, were resurrected. After Jesus' resurrection, these saints came out of the tombs, entered the holy city of Jerusalem, and appeared to many people, as recorded in Matthew 27 verses 52 to 53. Earthquakes are known for their ability to cause significant damage, especially in regions such as Palestine, which is situated on a considerable seismic fault. Such tremors can easily cause tombs carved out of stone to burst open. However, the resurrection of the bodies of these saints cannot be explained solely as a natural consequence of the earthquake. It must be attributed directly to divine action. This suggests that God was actively behind this seismic event, underlining the importance and magnitude of the events at the crucifixion. The earthquake mentioned by Matthew was one of 2 seismic events that marked crucial moments in Jesus' life and death. The first earthquake occurred at the time of the crucifixion, causing the tombs to open, and the second earthquake occurred at the time of Jesus' resurrection, further emphasizing the divine nature of these events. Matthew emphasizes that the opening of the tombs and the resurrection of the saints are significant testimonies to Jesus' victory over death. Those who were resurrected are described as those who had fallen asleep, a common expression in the New Testament to describe people who have died but whose eternal destiny is assured. This supernatural event, where the bodies of the saints were resurrected and appeared in Jerusalem, serves as a powerful testimony to Jesus' redemptive work on the cross. The term holy people probably refers to pious figures from the Old Testament, heroes and martyrs from Israel's history, chosen to witness these miraculous events. The appearance of these saints in Jerusalem is a clear sign of the efficacy of Jesus' sacrifice and anticipates Paul's teaching about Jesus being the first fruits of the dead, 1 Corinthians 15 verses 20 to 23. Paul explains that Christ rose from the dead as the first of many who will also be raised, guaranteeing the future resurrection of all believers. The resurrection of these saints can be seen as a prelude to the final resurrection that all believers hope for, a hope made possible through the death and resurrection of Jesus. This extraordinary event marked the beginning of a new era, where death was defeated and the resurrection to eternal life became a reality. It is important to note that these resurrected saints appeared only after Jesus' resurrection, entering Jerusalem and being seen by many. The Bible does not specify the final destination of these resurrected saints, whether they died again or were taken to heaven with Jesus. The death of the Son of God had a profound impact on nature itself. The famous preacher Charles Spurgeon commented that while the hearts of men did not respond to the dying cries of the dying Redeemer, the rocks broke. The inanimate rocks showed more sensitivity than the human hearts for which Jesus shed his blood. Matthew wants us to understand that the earthquake occurred on the day of Jesus' crucifixion and again on the day he was revealed as resurrected. The power of the new life was so great that it brought back to life some of the pious people who had died. This account is one of the most intriguing passages in Matthew's Gospel, and we don't get many additional details about these events. No other source provides us with information about this specific occurrence, which makes Matthew's account all the more unique and significant. These supernatural events underline the importance of Jesus' death and resurrection, not just as historical events, but as cosmic events that alter the course of history and eternity. Number 3. The veil of the temple was torn in two, Matthew 27 verses 50 to 51. The moment Jesus cried out again in a loud, agonizing cry, he voluntarily gave up his spirit. Jesus, in complete submission to his Father's plan, dismissed his spirit from his body. At that very moment, the veil of the Holy of Holies in the temple was torn in two, from top to bottom. The earth shook violently and the rocks shattered. The curtain separating the sacred area of the temple from the Holy of Holies was torn in two. This curtain was the only barrier between the sacred space and the holiest part of the temple, symbolizing the separation between God and humanity. In the book of Acts 6 verse 7, we read that many priests of the early church became obedient to the faith. Perhaps the tearing of this veil was a clear sign to them of the greatness of Jesus' work, possibly contributing to the spread of this knowledge. The book of Hebrews, specifically in 9:1-9, explains that the veil in the temple separated the Holy of Holies, the place of God's presence on earth, from the rest of the temple, where men dwelt. According to the first covenant, there were regulations for divine worship and for the earthly sanctuary. A sacred tent was erected, with a first outer section, where the lampstand and the table with the consecrated bread were, called the holy place. Behind the second veil, there was another inner section, known as the Holy of Holies. The book of Exodus describes that this thick veil was made of fine materials such as blue, purple, scarlet, and twisted linen. Now, Christ is our high priest, and as believers in his finished work, we share in that high priesthood. We can enter the Holy of Holies through him. Hebrews 10 verses 19-20 states, "We have confidence to enter the most holy place through the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way opened for us through the veil, which is his body." As we visualize this scene, we see a symbolic image of Jesus' flesh being torn for us, just as the veil was torn for us. The book of Hebrews gives us a detailed and glorious explanation of the deep meaning associated with the tearing of the veil. The veil hanging in the temple was a constant reminder that sin made human beings unworthy of being in God's presence. The sin offering, presented once a year, along with the many other daily sacrifices, clearly illustrated that sin could not really be atoned for or eradicated by simple animal sacrifices. What Jesus Christ did on the cross destroyed the barriers that separated God from people, allowing us to approach God with confidence and boldness. Hebrews 4 verses 14-16 says, "Therefore, since we have a great high priest who has entered heaven, Jesus the Son of God, let us hold firmly to our confession of faith. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who, like us, has been through every kind of temptation, yet without sin. So let us approach the throne of grace with all confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in time of need." Jesus' body was torn, as was the veil, symbolizing that we can now approach God with boldness. We have a high priest presiding over the heavenly courts, ensuring that the believer has full access to God. At the moment Christ died, the heavy curtain of cloth that separated the two main rooms of the temple was torn from top to bottom by an invisible hand. The death of the Son of God was accompanied by enormous tremors in nature, as if there was an emotional connection between the inanimate creation and the Creator. This event was not just a coincidence, but a powerful testimony that creation recognized the importance of Jesus' sacrifice. The torn veil symbolizes the removal of the separation between God and humanity, ushering in a new era of direct access to God through Jesus Christ. Number 4, there was darkness over the whole earth. Matthew 27 verse 45. From midday until 3 in the afternoon, a thick, dense darkness covered the whole earth. This extraordinary phenomenon was recorded in Matthew's Gospel, thus fulfilling the prophecy found in Amos 8 verses 8-9, where it is written, "And it shall come to pass in that day, says the Lord God, that I will cause the sun to go down at noon, and I will darken the earth in broad daylight." During Jesus' ministry, many asked him for a sign from heaven, and now, at the moment of his death, they received one, but one that reflected the spiritual blindness of their hearts. In the middle of the day, when the sun should have been at its highest and brightest, the earth was shrouded in darkness until 3 in the afternoon. This supernatural darkness could not have been caused by an eclipse, because the moon was full and in this phase cannot come between the earth and the sun. This sudden divine intervention brought a darkness that surprised everyone, especially considering the limited astronomical knowledge of the time. In addition, Matthew mentions an earthquake that occurred at this time, aligning with the sacred narrative and showing the catastrophic nature of the events surrounding the crucifixion. Creation itself could not remain indifferent in the face of the injustice committed against its creator. The sun withdrew its rays, refusing to illuminate the ungodly acts that were taking place. The darkness at this critical moment can be interpreted in various ways. In ancient times, darkness was often associated with mourning and the death of great figures. Both Jews and Gentiles could see this darkness as a cosmic sign, indicating the death of a king. In addition, darkness was a clear symbol of divine judgment, a sign that something extremely serious was taking place. The tombs opened, and many bodies of the saints, that is, the people of God who had died, were resurrected and came out of their tombs after Jesus' resurrection. They entered the holy city of Jerusalem and appeared to many, Matthew 27 verses 52 to 53. This incredible event was further proof of the divine power and victory over death that Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection represented. This darkness at the time of Jesus' crucifixion was not just a natural phenomenon, but a powerful spiritual testimony. It symbolized the mourning over the death of the Son of God, the sadness of creation, and divine judgment over humanity's sin. The darkness that covered the earth was a foretaste of the extraordinary events that would follow, including the resurrection of Jesus and the promise of new life for all believers. Number 5. The soldier overseeing the execution realized that Jesus was innocent. Now when the centurion and those who guarded Jesus with him saw the earthquake and the things that were happening, they were terrified and said, "Truly this was the Son of God." Matthew 27 verses 53 to 54. The Roman centurion had the crucial responsibility of ensuring that the crucifixions were carried out accurately and without any interruption. He usually commanded a group of around 100 soldiers and was an experienced military man whose career was defined by his bravery, discipline, and efficiency. His position demanded a cool and objective posture, necessary to fulfill strict orders and maintain order during public executions. However, Jesus' crucifixion was no ordinary event, and the extraordinary circumstances of that day left an indelible mark on the centurion and his men. The role of a centurion was not just limited to supervision. He was an enforcer of Roman will, ensuring that the condemned died according to the laws of the empire. He had witnessed countless crucifixions, each with its own particularities and horrors. However, what he saw that day on Golgotha was completely different from anything he had ever witnessed. Jesus, a man he had probably heard of only a short time before, was now there, hanging on the cross, accused of blasphemy by the Jewish religious leaders and condemned by Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor. From the outset, Jesus' arrest and trial were marked by a series of unusual events. Jesus did not aggressively defend himself during the trial, nor did he beg for his life. He remained calm, accepting his fate with impressive dignity. During the crucifixion, while the other criminals crucified next to Jesus screamed and struggled, Jesus remained serene. This composure began to intrigue the centurion, who was used to seeing men curse their executioners and fight death until their last breath. The events that took place during the hours Jesus was on the cross were even more impressive. From midday until 3 in the afternoon, a supernatural darkness covered the whole earth. This darkness was inexplicable because it couldn't have been an eclipse, given that the moon was full. Nature, it seemed, was responding to Jesus' imminent death. The centurion, a man with a limited understanding of astronomical phenomena, saw this as a divine sign, an event that was beyond human comprehension and natural manipulation. In addition to the darkness, there was a great earthquake that shook the earth at the moment Jesus gave up his spirit. Stones shattered and tombs opened, with many deceased saints resurrecting and appearing in the holy city of Jerusalem. These supernatural events were enough to leave anyone stunned, but for the centurion, they were a confirmation of Jesus' unique character. He couldn't ignore the sequence of powerful events that were taking place before his eyes. Jesus' reaction to suffering was also a decisive factor. While suffering one of the most painful deaths imaginable, he didn't utter words of hatred or revenge. Instead, Jesus asked the Father to forgive his executioners. "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Luke 23 verse 34. These words of compassion and forgiveness, coming from someone who was suffering excruciating pain, were absolutely remarkable. They showed a depth of love and mercy that the centurion had never witnessed before. The centurion was also aware of the accusations against Jesus and knew that the Jewish religious leaders had manipulated the process to ensure Jesus' crucifixion. They claimed that Jesus had blasphemed by claiming to be the Son of God. However, seeing the way Jesus faced death, the centurion began to question these accusations. The dignified and compassionate way in which Jesus behaved throughout the ordeal was a stark contrast to the image of an arrogant blasphemer. The centurion's recognition that Jesus was truly the Son of God was a moment of profound spiritual revelation. He, a soldier hardened by war and violence, saw something in Jesus that transcended human laws and religious practices. This wasn't a casual recognition, but a statement founded on the observation of extraordinary events and Jesus' unusual response to his suffering. For a Roman soldier, the admission that a crucified man was the Son of God was a statement of great importance. It signaled a change of heart and mind, a recognition that he had witnessed something sacred and divine. The The faith that was born at that moment in the centurion's heart was a powerful testimony to Jesus' identity and mission. This recognition was not an isolated event, but a culmination of everything that had taken place from Jesus' arrest to his death. The supernatural events, the dignity of Jesus, and the compassion he showed to the end, all led the centurion to declare, "Truly, this was the Son of God." This recognition not only emphasized Jesus' innocence, but also served as a testimony that he was, in fact, who he claimed to be. The cross, which should have been a symbol of shame and defeat, became a symbol of divine revelation and salvation. The foot of the cross is, in fact, where all men, regardless of their origin or status, find common ground. In the first century and even today, the message of the cross is a powerful declaration of love and redemption, an invitation for all to embrace the transformed life that Jesus offers. The journey of faith begins with recognizing the truth that the cross represents and continues with a life dedicated to following Jesus' teachings, living in the light of his grace and mercy. We must cultivate an intense passion to know him more deeply. May this burning desire always be present in our hearts, so that we can truly understand the one who loved us and gave himself up for us. A question that naturally arises is how the encounter with Jesus impacted the lives of the soldiers present at the crucifixion. Did any of them become Christians? There is a tradition mentioned by the pulpit commentary which says that the centurion present at the crucifixion was called Longinus. According to this tradition, he would have become a fervent follower of Jesus, preached the gospel, and eventually died as a martyr. Although this is just a tradition and we can't confirm its veracity, we know that the truth has a way of touching people's hearts deeply. The cross of Jesus has unrivaled transformative power. The centurion began the day as a Roman officer tasked with overseeing an execution, but ended it recognizing Jesus as the Son of God. This transformation is a testimony to Christ's redemptive power. Jesus has already taken the initiative for our salvation by dying for us. Now it's up to us to respond to this act of love. Jesus gave his life so that we could have ours back. He died in our place so that we could live through him. On the cross, Jesus not only satisfied divine justice, but also redeemed us by becoming our substitute. He experienced separation from communion with the Father, an immense suffering, but one that was part of God's loving plan of redemption. Some may consider these events to be myths or mere theological stories, but they are unique testimonies to God's extraordinary acts in human history. These supernatural and extraordinary events confirm the truth of the gospel and the transforming reality of Christ's love. If this content has been valuable to you, I ask you to support me with your subscription so you don't miss our next videos. Together, we can enlighten more minds and expand our understanding. Thank you for being here, and God bless you.